right. I am here with Harry Henien, who recently microacquired a startup off of Microacquire. How you doing, Harry?
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you for building this.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining the podcast. And so, for those that may not know you, do you want to maybe give a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm born and raised in the UK, of Egyptian and Armenian heritage. I moved to LA about 6 years ago, and I've been working in finance for the past 14 years in, different departments such as like private wealth and funds and trading. And I would say during the middle of COVID, I work in a family office for one family and we bought a technology company. And through this partnership, I envisioned that we need to acquire technology companies that are either operating or could be operated, and help it complement our existing like portfolio of business. And 2 years forward, I came across your platform, which is, to be honest, very helpful because at times there's things that I have time to build. I have my own developers offshore. And if I see something that's interesting, such as, little technology websites or platforms on your website that could be interesting, I could buy it and then plug it in to our business. So
That's
that's
awesome.
that's kind of a small backstory.
I like it.
Thank
Congrats.
you. Thank you.
So, in terms of what did you acquire? If you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. There was a website, it's a job portal called onboarded.app. And actually, what's really funny is the seller previously listed a different platform before that I wanted to buy. And I kept messaging him and I was like, I want this platform. And he wasn't answering for a while. And then I realized he was in Belgium, so the time difference was a little bit off, and he was doing an internship at Microsoft. So, anyways, that sold. And he said, I apologize. Like someone literally like bought it after a few hours.
Oh, wow.
So I told him, I said, listen, like if you build anything in the future, because I like the tech stack that he was using. And by the way, I'm not a technical guy. I just started really learning in the past few years about, different languages. So I was really like interested in the way he was designing and putting together products. And he said, yeah, sure. He says, I'm not sure because I'm at Microsoft, so I don't have time. And funny enough, like a few months later, he posted something new, and I actually wanted something like this for one of our businesses. It's a good way to tap into a market for our business, if that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
kind of the that's kind of like the concept we're doing.
Yeah, we see that. We see that pretty frequently where we'll see, larger buyers buying smaller startups as, bolt-ons where they can either add the technology or the people or the, whatever it may be as a
Absolutely.
benefit to, the larger entity. So that's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. So it was a nice process. He was very helpful, and I mean, I didn't realize it would be this seamless. So yeah, it was. I would definitely do it again. So
That's good to hear. So I guess in terms of, can you walk me through just how did you go through due diligence in terms of, maybe
sure,
reviewing the application, transferring the applications, any sort of how
sure.
you did it and maybe tips for other potential buyers?
Yeah, so to be honest, I would make a list on your platform of all the relevant platforms that I had an interest in. And then I would speak with our partner of the software company, and I would just run him through like, hey, like I saw this. Do our developers have experience within this segment? If he would say no, but I do, then it's something that I want. I think it could be something something that we could use in the future to try to develop more of. So I would do like kind of like a filter. I would write and ask for more information. I would create some rapport with the seller, and I would kind of like try to see, is this something that we could use now, or do I have to put it on the shelf later? So it's kind of like figuring out internally within our business, like, is this something that we could use? Then I just create rapport, and we talk about what's the tech stack, like, is there any like customers? Because sometimes like they'll say, I have between this number of customers and this, but how many are paying? So we kind of like go through that together during our chat. And then I would say like the next step was, figuring out like the price, like, is it like negotiable? Is there anything proprietary? Is there any API? So I have to really understand what am I buying, right? And
Hmm.
how would I do the transfer and how long will the transfer take? And given like I'm not a technical guy, to be honest, like with this one, it was rather unique because the guy was hand holding me during the whole like process. We went on Zoom and it took about 4 hours, and yeah, so like I have to we figure out like all these functions, and then once everything was agreed, we would open the escrow and then I would make the payment. um, and I think it's important to really understand, as I said, like what are you getting, and then are they going to help with the transition? Unless you have a migration team, I think that could be a really cool service or a feature like in the future for the non-technical guys to be like, not afraid of like what's going to happen next. And yeah, so once that all goes through, we just set up a time and we just went through the transition, and he was nice enough to say, like, here's my phone number and email, you can contact me anytime if you have any issues in the future. So it was like a nice gesture and
Uh,
nice, like,
yeah,
a nice transition to that. The only thing, like, for me with this one was the way he set it up was actually very complex. And I asked my developer, I said, why are we using like Vercel here, AWS, Heroku, like there's bits and pieces everywhere. And at first, like, to be honest, I was like scared. I was like, oh my God, like it's just scattered everywhere. And he said, like, usually it's to save on money. So like to save on like subscriptions and try to use something that's maybe like free, or to mitigate any future hacks of the database. So he says like he's a smart guy for kind of like spreading it like around. And at the end, like I migrated it to like my own like standalone like server and whatnot. But regardless, like it was a overall it was a good experience to like do something like that, like over the internet.
yeah.
So that's in a nutshell, like kind of like my process, if that's makes sense.
Yeah, no, that was great. I guess now I'm thinking, I assume you're looking at, multiple businesses at any given time. What are maybe some yellow flags that you've seen from sellers, or maybe just advice you would give to sellers looking to potentially get acquired?
So like red flags of a seller.
Yeah, just maybe top three tips you give to a seller looking to, sell their business, just so they have,
Oh,
because
for a seller. Yeah.
yeah, the transaction you went through sounded very smooth. You built great rapport with the founder. You understood, you had a due diligence checklist. But just if you had any advice for, new founders selling a business for their first time, what's maybe like the top three pieces of advice you give?
I think I would say like first try to, depending on like who they're talking to, don't maybe assume that everyone is technical. Maybe just try to tone it down to, you know, this is what it is. This is like the potential. These are all the ongoing costs that you could incur. But potentially if you had, I don't know, XYZ, this could be what you're facing like moving forward. I think also definitely create like a conversation because I have noticed with some sellers, they're very, this is what it is. And then they don't really want to engage into explaining maybe like why this was used or whatnot. It's more of, I just want to exit, you know? So I think definitely like create a conversation with, who you're speaking with. It's hard to obviously qualify whether the buyer is serious or not, but I think that could be something good. And then I would say like try to ensure to the buyer that you will be there that during like the transitions. I think that one is kind of not really highlighted most, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, that's some really good advice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd probably distill it down to just the more a seller can de-risk the acquisition for the buyer,
exactly.
everything from building personal rapport, just being a good honest person. Number
That's
two, pointing out things that could be growth. In a sense, you're almost kind of selling the applications, both the good and bad parts, which
ab-
is that trust and transparency aspect, and then the transition as well. Having a transition plan laid out in advance is a huge advantage, comparative to other founders that may not have that. Because if you're interested in that application, you're wondering what do we do next sometimes. And instead of figuring it out on the go, if you have a plan as a founder ready, available for
absolutely.
buyers to review, I think you build that confidence and you get a lot more interest from buyers. At least that's what I've seen across the
Abs-
board.
Absolutely. And I have acquired like, other platforms before, like a very old Spanish like microfinance loan like blog that's been around for many years. But to be honest, like it wasn't from your platform. It was from Flippa, and the transition was terrible, And so yeah, so maybe it was the experience of like micro acquire. It was good. So it kind of like, embedded into me that moving forward, like now I know what to ask, I know how to communicate. And if I receive the same communication, then I know that I'm in the right kind of like path. So definitely.
That's some great advice. I guess, I'd love to know, I mean, what's next for you? You've acquired multiple companies. What are you currently working on? Like what's next for you, Harry?
So, like I have kind of like this process. If there's time, I'll get my guide or get my developers to build something, invest in the time, all that stuff, and then deploy it within the business, use it, and then if it's good, try to commercialize it. I think that's kind of like my thought process. So if let's say as an example you have a wealth management business, like it's not enough to just run Google ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff. I think like really the future is to have your own maybe like tech company or ventures company and go to micro acquire and just like have some time to like see, okay, there's an influencer marketing platform. What if I bought it and I consolidated it into its own separate business, but then it's a way for you to tap into the customers of those influencers. So I think that's the way that I'm kind of like viewing this as an opportunity versus just going out into the private markets and buying your traditional type of business that takes a long time, is expensive, and is potentially not scalable. So tech is definitely a very easy, potentially inexpensive way to acquire different types of platforms and integrate into your own. So like now, like what we're working on is an RSI standalone platform, which is like so you can have a conference with anyone in the world and do remote simultaneous interpretation of voice. And that's kind of like a very big barrier in like cross-border wealth management, speaking to
Mm.
different people in different countries. So that is like in the works. And then a standalone live video into your platform. So again, people come to your website, let's say wealth managers. A lot of them don't want to call. They don't want to give their information, but there's always that element of let me chat for info or let me see someone video wise. So I'm kind of like, that's kind of the direction that we're going in at the moment. But I look at micro acquire kind of as a sell side tech, platform where if I see something that is already built, maybe it doesn't make any money, which is fine. Like I'm trying to treat micro acquire acquisitions as more on the freemium side. So I'm not trying to monetize it. I just want people who are accustomed to wanting to post a job, someone to use it for whatever media related services, and then
Ah,
tap into that sector with our business. And so that's really like what I'm using micro acquire for and what I intend to keep using it for.
so
So
so to clarify, it sounds like you're acquiring assets to support your main businesses, but more as like lead generation services. Is that
e-
correct?
exactly.
And that's a great strategy because companies like HubSpot has like the free website grader, but they capture your email address,
Absolutely.
so potentially sell you other products down the line. Um,
Without it
there-
being like invasive or spammy and whatnot. It's just like,
you're giving, I love
sorry.
it. I said you're
Yeah.
giving free value, and
Yeah.
bringing them into your ecosystem early, building
Exactly.
trust, and then over time, those customers could potentially convert into paying customers or users into paying customers.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no, as I said, like you could do it with blogs. I'm doing it with blogs, and I'm always just thinking like, how can I integrate this? Like, what's the value now? What type of emails are there? Like the microfinance blog came with 300,000 emails of, all kinds of information, which gives us kind of like, an opportunity to understand, okay, maybe 10% could be potentially for like wealth management business. Like you can't acquire that in today's like age, but you can through other platforms. So it's kind of like figuring out what makes sense and what not. So to be honest, like I haven't seen a lot of people from our industry kind of like take that view or that leap, but I think if they are properly educated and there is like a form of a hand holding or a form of, like, it can work. But you need to be able to figure out, does this work for you also, so I think, yeah, so that's like more and more like the idea and the vision.
I like it. I like how
Thank you.
you have a main business and then again you're acquiring assets that provide
Exactly.
value to convert into paying customers for the main business. That's
And you
awesome.
can you can do it with any industry as well. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, and I just noticed that you have now 2,258 startups, which is way more than when I first acquired the onboarded app. So obviously, more and more creators are coming into the picture to see like, who can really use the asset or not.
Yeah, believe it or not, at this point we're seeing typically on average usually 2 or 3 acquisitions per day.
Wow.
So it's definitely an exciting market.
Nice.
So I'm happy the acquisition worked out for you, and I hope maybe I'll see you again on another podcast with another acquisition. But
Yeah.
I do have just two final questions before I let you go. Um, what's one book you would maybe recommend to an entrepreneur that's looking to uh, I guess just your favorite book in general related to, building businesses.
To be honest, it's bad. I don't read that much. But what I will say, there's two things. I love Twitter. Like I treat Twitter in the mornings as uh my newspaper. And obviously you're one of the main accounts that I follow. And it is a really good your tweets are quite empowering. I would say like I like to read what other people are experiencing through their Twitter posts. And I would say the second is, just do it. Like practical experience. There's YouTube. There's so many videos. You can learn how to create your own Chrome extension, which I did one time. Like learn Node, some JavaScript, PHP. Like I really like truly believe that if you just go to YouTube and search for anything, you can learn and then practice yourself. And it took me like a few years to like learn how to build a WordPress site and through trial and error. And now I could do HTML, and I know how to connect a database. And so like I don't really read like the self-help books to kind of like motivate me or and whatnot. So I'm very visual. Like I need it to be presented, and then I do it myself. So that's my only like two pieces of advice to any entrepreneur.
That I love the learning aspect in terms of just how accessible information is today. You can really, you're correct in saying, you
And
know,
GitHub
yeah,
even,
yeah, Reddit,
so
YouTube, GitHub, Twitter. Obviously, I'm on there a lot. So I guess my final question, you kind of answered, but I'm just gonna ask it again.
sure.
If you just had to give like one piece of advice to an entrepreneur starting out, what would it be?
Can I say two?
You can say three, you can as many as you want.
I would say the first one is just do it. And the second is don't be afraid. Because that's something that I see among a lot of people, afraid of it won't work, rejection, or whatever. I think you just have to, if you just take those two in mind, you can go far. But if you don't, like you're always just held back, and life is moving on, and new technologies are being built. So I would say, yeah, I would say those two as my piece of
I
advice.
I couldn't be in more agreement. I think the number one thing that holds a lot of entrepreneurs back is just fear of failure. But
Yeah.
I always say, it's much better to say, "Oh well, I tried," than just "what if."
And keep trying until something works, because something will hit
And you also
through
learn from
your,
failures
and
too.
you also learn. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's sage advice, Harry.
Thank
All right,
you.
all right, Harry. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast,
Thank you
and
for having me.
of course, if people want to learn more about you or just what you're building, where can they find you?
Um,
I could put
so
I could put your Twitter account in the show notes, or
yeah, sure. If you would, I don't, to be honest, like I don't post. I'm not. I really go to like just read. But I think I comment on yours the most because I really do, appreciate all your posts. It's, as I said, it's very empowering. But I mean, my Twitter, it's available, and feel free to ask any questions if anyone has a question.
sounds good. Well,
Thanks so
Harry,
much.
I'm definitely rooting for you, and congrats on all your success.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day, man.
You too. Cheers.